Rebecca White ended her Monday evening the same way she had ended many others at her counseling office in Orlando. It was January 19th, the sky outside soft and quiet after a long day. She had completed her final session of the night. Her client, a man in his 30s, gathered his belongings and sat for a moment, preparing to leave. He had no idea someone else was on the way, walking with a storm of intent that no one in that building had imagined. The clock neared 9 p.m. The hallway outside her suite was silent. The building usually felt safe at that hour. Tenants trusted the space, and professionals rented rooms to work in peace. The receptionist staff left hours earlier. Visitors rarely arrived at night. Rebecca stood to tidy her desk. Her day was done. She ran a small practice named Down to Earth Therapy Solutions, where she worked as a licensed mental health counselor. Clients often described her as patient and warm. She had built the office into a supportive environment where strangers walked in with heavy problems and walked out believing change was possible. Then the outer door opened. Michael Smith, age 39, stepped inside the building and walked straight down the hallway. He had been to the office before. He had once been one of Rebecca's clients. He did not speak to anyone as he moved. He did not wait at the lobby area. He did not call ahead. He pushed forward until he reached her office door and demanded to speak with her. The reaction inside the room was confusion at first. Rebecca's final client of the day watched as the situation changed in seconds. Smith insisted on seeing her. There was no appointment. His words carried pressure. The two adults in the room tried to understand what he wanted. What happened next created chaos that would stretch from that office to the next morning's headlines. Smith suddenly attacked. He targeted Rebecca first. Shock filled the small office as both Rebecca and her client tried to defend themselves. The struggle threw the room into disorder. Papers fell from the desk. Chairs scraped across the aisle. The therapist's final client of the night sustained multiple injuries while trying to survive. He later told rescuers he fought to distract Smith long enough to reach his phone. During the fight, the client got hold of the phone and managed to call 911. The dispatcher heard strained breathing and panic. Police and emergency responders rushed to the scene. Smith fled before deputies arrived. His escape left Rebecca and her client wounded on the floor. Neither knew where Smith went or what he planned to do next. The office that once housed confidential therapy conversations had turned into the center of a violent crime. Deputies and medics reached the office minutes later. Rebecca and the client were transported to a local hospital. Both had sustained stab wounds. Medics worked urgently to stabilize them. Rebecca would not survive her injuries. She died at the hospital, leaving family members stunned and asking how an attack happened inside a building where people sought emotional healing. The male client survived. Authorities later confirmed his identity would not be released. He would live with multiple physical injuries, including a wound to his mouth and nerve damage in his hand. His mother posted on GoFundMe that he would carry permanent scars. She thanked the public for support. She wrote about guilt and shock. She wrote about how close he came to losing his life in a place that was supposed to help others recover from unseen pain. News began to spread across Orlando by the next morning. A therapist had been attacked. A former client was believed to be responsible. Deputies searched for Smith overnight. No one knew where he had gone or whether he would resurface. Investigators looked into his background. Records showed Smith was a registered sex offender. He had been released from prison in 2022. His parole required psychiatric evaluation. His profile described traits linked to violent and antisocial behavior. Deputies did not immediately reveal what had triggered him or why he returned to Rebecca's office that night. Families of nearby office tenants asked the same question. How did a former client gain access at that hour without anyone stopping him at the entrance? The building was not supposed to be a place where strangers walked unchecked so late in the day. Mental health workers often operate on trust, yet trust did not protect Rebecca that night. The investigation continued into the early morning. Police expanded the search beyond the immediate neighborhood. Drivers heading to work later reported patrol cars spread across multiple areas. Deputies checked parking lots, wooded areas, and roadside pull-offs. They believed Smith was armed and dangerous. They warned residents to be cautious. At around 8 a.m., a call came into authorities. A body had been found roughly 14 miles from the therapy building. Deputies arrived and confirmed it was Smith. They stated he had taken his own life. They chose not to release details. The public only knew the suspect was dead and the threat had ended. Smith's death closed the pursuit, but it did not provide answers. Investigators had no motive. The timeline suggested intent, but no one could explain why. No note was found at the scene. No witnesses had reported earlier confrontations. The silence around his final hours created a void filled with speculation. Back at the therapy building, police tape blocked the door. Tenants arrived later and froze at the sight. They knew the office for hallway greetings and friendly nods. That morning, the building had become a crime scene. Rebecca's family stepped forward later with a statement. They questioned how a violent individual walked into the building unnoticed. They questioned security. They questioned gate access. They wanted accountability. They described Rebecca as irreplaceable. They described their grief as heavy and sharp. They were angry and searching for answers. The Orange County Sheriff's Office released the first official statement before noon. The information was limited. They confirmed the death of a licensed mental health counselor. They confirmed the suspect was a former client. They confirmed the suspect's body had been found in a separate location. Reporters rushed to gather more details. Television crews positioned cameras outside the tape line. Journalists made calls to nearby businesses in the complex. Tenants answered with fear and disbelief. Many worked in fields that required private meetings. Their offices were supposed to offer trust and confidentiality. The idea of a client returning and targeting a therapist felt unreal and unsafe. Law enforcement officials walked in and out of the building. Crime scene technicians documented the room where the attack occurred. They photographed the hallway. They searched for signs of forced entry. They noted building access points. They examined lock systems. They looked for any actions that might explain how the suspect entered without delay. Inside the hospital, the surviving client remained under medical supervision. His injuries included a wound to his mouth, damage to his hand, and other cuts. His mother described the damage on GoFundMe. She reported that he would have permanent scars. She thanked donors. She said her son fought for his life. She shared that he was recovering and that doctors expected him to survive. The news spread across social media. Therapists and counselors in other cities posted about workplace safety. Clients asked if private offices required additional protection. Mental health professionals explained that therapy rooms were designed for comfort. Security screening was rare. Late-night appointments were common. Many therapists preferred to make themselves available to clients who could only attend sessions after work. The suspect's background raised more questions. Michael Smith had been released from prison in 2022. His status as a registered sex offender placed him under supervision. His parole terms required psychological evaluation and monitoring. Public records described him as someone with a violent, antisocial personality. Observers asked if additional follow-up or specialized treatment could have made a difference. Officials did not answer. Authorities had not shared any motive. They did not know why Smith confronted Rebecca that night. They did not know if he planned the attack or acted impulsively. They did not know if he contacted anyone before leaving his home. His death closed the investigative path to direct questioning. Rebecca's family moved from shock to structured concern. In a written statement, they addressed several issues. They questioned the building's security features. They asked how an individual entered the professional space without verification. They asked about surveillance. They asked if emergency protocols existed for late-night sessions. They felt the building lacked control over who accessed the therapy suites after business hours. Their statement said they were heartbroken. They said they were angry. They said systematic failures needed scrutiny. They believed the event was preventable. They demanded accountability. They also mourned publicly. They described Rebecca as a pillar to clients and family. They said she guided others through difficult chapters of life. They said she believed in healing and personal responsibility. They said she was loved. Rebecca's colleagues added their voices. Several counselors in the area explained how difficult their work can be. Mental health professionals often assist individuals dealing with trauma, addiction, personality disorders, family instability, and legal challenges. They do so in settings that favor privacy and confidentiality instead of strict security. Law enforcement officials held a follow-up briefing. A spokesperson confirmed the timeline. Smith entered the building around 9 p.m., confronted Rebecca and her client, attacked both, and fled before officers arrived. The surviving victim called 911. Deputies and medics transported both victims to a hospital. Rebecca died later that night. Smith's body was discovered the next morning around 8 a.m., about 14 miles away. The spokesperson did not comment on motive. He did not offer additional context. He said the case remained active. He said investigators were reviewing all available information. He asked the public to allow the family privacy. Reporters searched for information about Smith's history as a client. It remained unclear how long he had worked with Rebecca. It remained unclear when he stopped attending therapy. No medical details were released due to privacy law. Former workplaces did not comment. Neighbors described him as quiet. Public debate shifted to building security. Tenants in similar complexes across Orlando examined their own situations. Many discovered that office buildings housing therapists, attorneys, coaches, and consultants did not enforce late-night visitor checks. Most buildings relied on respectful professionalism rather than controlled entry. Rebecca's family believed the lack of oversight played a role in the attack. They wanted answers from the building's management. They wanted details about video surveillance. They wanted details about locked doors. They wanted clarity about policy gaps. Mental health trade groups discussed potential reforms. Some suggested panic buttons in therapy rooms. Others suggested stronger building access controls. Others suggested that therapists could coordinate with building management when scheduling late sessions. The ideas focused on risk reduction without compromising therapy spaces. Clients across Florida reacted with shock. Many had attended therapy rooms that felt safe. Many had never imagined violence in that setting. Some reached out to their counselors for reassurance. Some paused their appointments due to fear. The emotional fallout extended to professionals. Counselors expressed fear that rare violent incidents could affect their practice. They worried that family members would discourage them from continuing evening sessions. They worried that landlords would impose new limitations that might hurt availability for clients who need flexible hours. The story continued to develop as investigators interviewed witnesses and searched for patterns. Police compiled the timeline. They examined surveillance in nearby areas. They collected voice recordings from 911. They reviewed phone data. They hoped digital evidence would provide insight into Smith's mindset before the attack. Members of the public asked if Smith had contacted Rebecca before arriving. Law enforcement did not answer. They asked if he had been rejected from care. Law enforcement did not answer. They asked if he had exhibited signs of instability. Law enforcement did not answer. The gap in motive created suspense and fear. People wanted explanation. They wanted to understand how a former client turned violent. They wanted to understand why the confrontation happened at that moment in that office after that session. Rebecca's family began preparing for a memorial. Relatives traveled. Close friends organized support. The planning process moved forward while questions about the attack remained unanswered. Rebecca White's memorial service drew therapists, clients, relatives, and neighbors. Some knew her from family circles. Others knew her through her private practice. Many came because they wanted to honor the way she treated people. Speakers described her as focused, generous, and committed to helping others build resilience. The memorial took place inside a small community center. White candles decorated the stage. Visitors sat in rows, listening to relatives share stories. One relative said Rebecca built her career around service. Another relative said she always had time for clients in crisis. Several attendees talked about how rare it was to find a therapist who combined patience with firmness. Those traits made her respected in the local mental health community. Journalists stood outside. They waited for family members to exit, hoping to gain new statements. The family did not speak to the press that day. They stayed close to one another, avoiding further public pressure. Across Orlando, the larger conversation shifted to safety in professional buildings. Property managers checked their own layouts. Some considered adding late-hour access restrictions. Others planned to install cameras covering main entrances and hallways. They found gaps in current policies. Many of these buildings had been designed for convenience and confidentiality instead of layered security. The Florida mental health community responded with written statements. Several associations called for structural reforms. They requested improved safety standards for therapists who often work alone with clients. They highlighted the emotional toll therapists carry. Their work places them in direct contact with individuals who sometimes struggle with impulse control, legal issues, or trauma. These associations asked state leaders to consider grants for security upgrades. Reporters continued to investigate Michael Smith's history. Public records confirmed he was released from state prison in 2022. He carried the status of a registered sex offender. His parole terms included mandatory psychological evaluation. Officials said those evaluations were designed for people with violent tendencies. Reporters found no clear timeline showing when Smith stopped attending therapy with Rebecca. Privacy law blocked access to medical records from her practice. Law enforcement maintained a consistent position. They had no confirmed motive. They did not know why Smith returned to Rebecca's office on the night of January 19th. They did not know if anger, confusion, or obsession drove him. Investigators said data from Smith's phone showed no written explanation. They said there was no evidence that Rebecca expected him. They said she had completed a routine session with another client minutes before Smith entered the building. The surviving client showed signs of gradual improvement. His mother posted updates about his condition on the same fundraising page she created earlier. She said he was eating again. She said doctors were monitoring his hand injury due to nerve concerns. She said he faced a long recovery. He also faced emotional consequences from witnessing the attack. His family said they planned to arrange counseling for him. Friends of the surviving client said he did not blame Rebecca. They said he respected her as a therapist. They said he was lucky to be alive. They said he was still processing how fast the event escalated. They said he wanted privacy. Rebecca's family moved their focus from memorial preparation to policy advocacy. They communicated with building management. They sent letters requesting a clear explanation of access procedures. They wanted to know if doors were locked after business hours. They wanted to know who monitored the building at night. They wanted to know if anyone reviewed rental agreements for safety language. At the same time, the family worked with attorneys. Legal paths remained uncertain. The attack created a situation involving multiple institutions. The building management faced scrutiny. The parole system faced scrutiny. The mental health field faced scrutiny. Each sector responded with caution. A new statement from the family reached local news outlets. They described Rebecca as irreplaceable. They said the event raised questions about preventable failures. They said they were seeking clarity regarding building access and security. They said they wanted changes so other therapists would not face the same risk. People in Orlando continued to follow the case. Local news stations provided weekly updates. The sheriff's office reported that the investigation was moving into its final phase. Detectives confirmed that Smith acted alone. They found no accomplices. They found no threat to the public. They said they would close the case once all forensic and digital reports were completed. The final reports later confirmed the same. Smith entered the building alone. He confronted Rebecca and her client without warning. He inflicted injuries on both. He fled. He drove to a location outside Orlando. He ended his life. He left no statement. He left no explanation. Without motive, the narrative carried more weight. People questioned the gaps. The absence of clear reasoning created space for fear. If a former client could return without notice, what stopped similar incidents from happening elsewhere? Several therapy practices in Orlando responded with new procedures. Some added controlled entry at night. Some moved final sessions earlier. Some installed additional cameras. While not universal, These changes showed an industry responding to risk that had been ignored due to assumptions about safety. Down-to-earth therapy solutions, Rebecca's practice closed its doors. Former clients collected their records. Relatives eventually gathered Rebecca's office items. They removed framed diplomas, desk organizers, and notebooks. One family member said the office felt frozen in time. They said they could not reconcile the room with the news headlines that followed. Months later, people still referenced Rebecca's case in discussions about occupational safety. Advocates for mental health professionals cited her story when arguing for reforms. They said therapists work with high-risk individuals without institutional support. They said safety planning is as important as clinical training. Rebecca's family joined one of those advocacy efforts. They attended a roundtable organized by local officials. They shared their perspective. They asked for systematic improvements. They did not speak with anger. They spoke with grief and purpose. They wanted change that reflected the lessons of their loss. The surviving client later released a short written message through a friend. He thanked first responders. He said they saved his life. He thanked Rebecca's family. He expressed sympathy for their loss. He said he was committed to rebuilding his life. He said he would need time. The sheriff's office released their final statement on the case. They confirmed no further suspects. They confirmed no additional risk to the community. They expressed sympathy to both families. They offered no new answers regarding motive. What remained were the questions. People asked if stronger building access would have changed the outcome. They asked if stricter monitoring of high-risk offenders would have changed the outcome. They asked if mental health environments needed upgrades to match the real challenges of their work. The attack removed a therapist from her community. It scarred a client who trusted her. It forced an entire professional field to confront weak points in environments that were assumed safe.